Welcome to the Awake Experience. I'm here today with Justin K, and he's going to pronounce his name for me properly right now. Justin, how do you say it so I don't screw it up?
It's Kaliszewski.
Kaliszewski, Justin Kaliszewski.
It sounds just like it's spelled, man.
I know. Yeah, good point. Good point. I'm so psyched to have you on the show today, man. Before we start today, I just want to let everyone know what the Awake Experience is all about. We're just all about mindfulness here. And what I've learned is I've been a meditator for years. I've done yoga forever. And mindfulness has crept from the cushion into my everyday life. It's become what I eat, how my relationships go, who my friends are, how I take care of my health care, how I'm starting to grow my own food. So I feel like the Awake Experience is a place where you can learn all about mindfulness and support your mindful lifestyle. So today we're with Justin, and he's an award-winning artist, an avid adventurist, and the renowned creator and co-founder of Outlaw Yoga. I can't wait to get into Outlaw Yoga. He's written a book recently, two books actually. The Outlaw Protocol was his first one, which is how to live the outlaw life, and we're going to hear all about that today. And The Adventures of Babu, From There to Here, which is a children's book, which is so exciting. And we actually have a copy of it right here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more today. And also, Justin was just invited to teach at Yoga Journal in New York City at the Yoga Journal Conference, and that's April 21st. So you can fly into New York from anywhere in the country and
Earth Day weekend
and catch Justin there on Earth Day weekend. Yeah. And gosh, his new kids book too was endorsed by the animation director of The Simpsons, The Adventures of Babu. So how cool is that? So Justin, man, tell me how did you get to where you are in life, man? What's your backstory?
Man, you just brought up a lot of different talking points. So take them one at a time, huh? It's funny because yoga kind of found me as it tends to. A girl first invited me into the studio, and when I first started teaching, it's funny because those two books you mentioned kind of bookend the hard and the soft aspects of us. And when I first started teaching, it was at Core Power Yoga. It was Yoga Sculpt, and then I taught Restore. And so I taught, the two ends of the spectrum. And it's funny that those two books now have been the first projects that I put out, on that side of things. One is, as you say, mindfulness is a great thing to practice on our mat and sitting on our ass on the cushion. But if we don't take it out into the world with us, then the lesson kind of stops halfway. So the Outlaw Protocol is just that. It's a protocol. It's how do you put mindfulness into your life in a really sustainable way. So it's full of tools. It's full of journaling pages, as you know, where you can explore, what the ideas mean to you, and then, put it into play in a way that helps propel you to be your highest self, your biggest, brightest self. So that was a really cool project, and that was a few years ago. And then the children's picture book, which you were a part of supporting, and a lot of people in Colorado, just kind of flowed through me. I painted the last picture in the book, and I'm not the world's best painter, so I really just wanted to paint something that was really simple and would make me smile. It was about this time a year, middle of the winter, 2 years ago, and my mom saw it, and she goes, "Oh, it looks like a children's book." And I go, "Beat it, Ma, get out of here," like you do with your ma. And, later that night I was meditating, and the whole story just popped into my head, fully formed, and I jumped up real fast and sketched out all the panels and wrote down the story. And then I spent about 2 years making that little book. And funny thing about Rich Gasparian, who's the animation director of The Simpsons, he's won a, the Academy Award? What's that called? The Oscar? It's called, what is it? The Academy Award, right? The Oscar? He's got an Oscar on his mantle for his work on the Simpsons movie. He's actually a longtime family friend. He used to wipe my butt when I was little. So he was college roommates of my my stepdad, Ken K, who's played class with me with you many, many times. They were college roommates. And I sent Rich the book that I was putting together, and he was just blown away by it. So he was happy to support it too on the community campaign side, and to give us that wonderful endorsement for the back cover. So it's been a pretty fun adventure myself from there to here. Been doing this a while, haven't we, brother?
Yeah, totally. We have. I'm so curious. I wanted to talk about mindfulness and yoga, and how yoga in the U.S. is led by mostly females. A lot of the teachers are female, and there's a lot. What's that? Yeah, like 80-90%, right? So how do we, and then in mindfulness too, or meditation, that tradition is very soft. You think of the monks' robes, and you think of the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh and their very sweet cadence and voice. Who knows what they're like with their senior students, but
Man, they're sweet guys, but yoga is a martial art. Let's be really clear about it. There might be 80% females in the yoga industry in the US. But we at Outlaw Yoga, we see closer to 50-50. We get a lot of dudes into the studio. And I think that's because of our unique stripped down approach to it. It's technically simple, but physically challenging, guaranteed to get you an ass kicking workout when you come into the Outlaw Yoga studio. But also, coming from a martial arts background, yoga was really familiar to me in that sense, even though, the contact stopped right there where the violence begins. You could see in it the roots of preparing for battle. If we look back to the scholarly literature, we can see pretty clearly that the modern asana practice that we go through, it came as Indians' response to British occupation, getting ready to fight, kind of like the capoeira movement in Brazil, so that they're pretending, oh, no, sir, this religion, but, really you're getting ready to fight a great battle. And, with a lot of honor, a lot of intention. You can look back to the Bhagavad Gita, which is all set in the middle of a battlefield, and see where perhaps kindness, nonviolence, mindfulness starts to intermingle with intentional action, karma, stuff like that.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about how you can bring mindfulness into your life through your yoga practice? So you said you're going to get a kick-ass yoga workout at Outlaw. So what would you say to someone who sees mindfulness as something soft and on the cushion and real mellow, and I'm washing the dishes, I know I'm washing the dishes, and how do you integrate that with getting your ass kicked in yoga?
I'll make it really easy. Talk to your mom on the phone or your romantic partner, and you tell me it's soft. At some point, they're going to say something or do something that really triggers you, really pisses you off. And in that moment, it might be happening in a soft setting, but up here, it's not soft at all. It's really sharp and really hard in the reactions that it creates. So whether or not that you're actually fighting and punching someone with your hands, you might be fighting all day long in between your ears. And as you and I both know, and every yogi out there, that kind of fight is more destructive over time than a physical one, because a physical, fight will be over in a few minutes and guys will high five each other and give a lot of respect to each other. But if you keep that battle going in your head all day long, then that's just going to produce deep-seated patterns of misery and suffering. And so, it might seem like a soft approach to it, but I don't know, man. I think it's pretty hard on either end.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your history with martial arts and how you made the transition to the yoga world?
Sure. I was playing basketball. I played basketball for years and years and years. And towards the end of my career, I was really hanging on. I was thinking about playing in Europe. I was playing the semi-pro league in the States. And I found I was just getting mad. I was getting thrown out of games. I was getting in fights with, players and refs and coaches. And I was in grad school at DU getting a master's degree in international studies. And a buddy of mine was sitting next to me. I told him I got thrown out of a game again. And he goes, you ought to come down to jiu-jitsu with me. And I go, man, I'm not a wrestler. I play basketball. He goes, just come down, And I walked in, and the first person I met was Mike Nichols. Mike, Big Mike Nichols? He was in the UFC for a few years there. He's on the cover of Westward. He's on the next UFC fighter. I met Mike. And he was, at the same time, probably the toughest and meanest looking guy I'd ever met, and one of the sweetest guys that I still am in touch with today. I think there was something that I fell in love with the first time that I started rolling around on the mat. And that was getting to get all that aggression and anger out in a productive setting. Mm-hmm. It was full of respect and, just the mutual affection and respect that comes when someone else is willing to let you put everything on the line against them. And so I really fell in love with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts for a few years. You know, Mike and I fought every day for hours. And so when I would leave that setting and someone would cut me off on the highway, I didn't have anything to prove. I'd just been fighting Big Mike for 3 hours. I would wave and, you know, think, oh, I hope you're okay. And I found that in a weird way, it invited a lot more love and compassion and softness into my life. And, you know, fast forward 3-4 years, I found yoga, or yoga found me. And it was yet another evolution of that, that setting, to be able to leave it all on your mat and to prove nothing to anybody but yourself. You know, the ultimate competitor is what I found there in yoga.
Huh. Well, you've helped a ton of people to live their life fully. If there's one thing I've noticed about your students and you, is that you guys know how to live fully. Outlaw Yoga is a lot more than just something you go and do one night a week on the mat. I mean, they read
Work
the
hard,
Outlaw
play
Protocol.
hard.
What's that? It becomes their lifestyle.
Work hard, play hard, right?
Yeah. Can you tell me more about how you've learned to live so fully and you know, how that rubs off on your students?
That's a great question, man. I wonder. You know, I've been really fortunate through choices and circumstance to live a lot of different lives in this lifetime. I've been a businessman, suit and tie wearing businessman, worked overseas in war zones, and, you know, ran nonprofits, and was able to be an athlete and an adventurer, and now I'm an author and an artist and teacher. And I think that, you know, the big thing for me is that boldness is a choice that's always available to us. So there's that old Turkish proverb that says, no matter how far you go down the wrong road, turn back. And I've tried to live by that without knowing it until I'd heard it, you know, that if you get down a wrong road and you just put your head down and try and barrel through it, it's not going to get you to where you want to go. But if you get to a point where you're like, well, I love martial arts, but this doesn't feel like the be all end all for me, then have no compunction about making a 90-degree turn and heading down a different road and finding something that does incite your passion. You know, I think our parents and the generations that have come before us, they did such an amazing job living that ideal of make your kids' lives better than yours were. You remember that? That was a big thing for parents for a couple generations. Well, mission accomplished. They've made our lives so fucking great. In a lot of ways, it's left some messes too. Maybe we'll talk about the environment at some point and sustainability. But, you know, as far as creating a platform for me to be my highest self, I've stood on the shoulders of giants. My mother, Kenke, you know, my greatest sources of inspiration are right next to me. My brother, Kyle, and people like that. And what I see in them has always been the ability to just go, hey, this isn't working for me. Let's change something, and let's be unafraid to change something dramatically. Your partner, your environment, the things you believe that you thought, you know, used to be true in your life, your values, always reassessing. Is this serving me? Is this creating my most productive platform for me to live my dharma, my passion in this life?
What's your experience been? That brings up something personal for me is I've produced a lot of yoga events as one of the things I've done. And now I'm moving more towards becoming a mindfulness teacher and starting a community around mindful living. So the things in my past that have been very good are Yoga Rocks the Park, Friday Night Yoga Club, these really great community events. And I love them and they're good. But what is that? What is that when you have to have the guts to do what's next, even though what's currently in your life is good? You know what I mean? Like I used to make decisions like this isn't working, so of course I'm not going to do that. What if something is working pretty good, but you know you can give more fully? There's a next step for you. How do you suggest people take that leap, or how have you taken that leap? Because it seems like you have the guts to keep trying different stuff. You know?
Yeah, no, I think it's an amazing question, Eric. And, you know, I've had the great fortune to be around since the beginning with some of these events that you've helped to pioneer. And, you know, I kind of sit in a similar position myself with delivering asana classes, for example. You know, I'm very passionate about igniting and growing consciousness in people. I could do without queuing another push-up in my life, you know? And sometimes the pleasant patterns are the hardest ones to break, because most people, they'll be really content to just coast. Oh, wow, I've hit this great point. I'm making good money. I have a sweet honey in my life, and I'll just coast to the end. And that used to be sort of the mentality, I think, that characterized our forefathers. Get a great job, work for 40 years, get the gold watch, retire. And I think there's something that pushes back in us now, because we've watched them do that so successfully for so long. And then we've watched them scratch their heads at the end of it and go, something still feels wrong in there, you know? And I think that can be one of the bolder decisions. It can be very superficially simple to go, wow, I'm unhappy. I need to change this. It's a little bit sneakier to go, wow, this is pretty pleasant and I'm pretty happy, but something inside me doesn't feel 100% fulfilled. Mm-hmm. What do I do now? And I think that's where it's time to put these practices into play, our meditation. From that place of silence, you know, the wisdom flows. And in that place, we can go, okay, what do I have to do to calibrate this much more to my Dharma? You know, how have my talents and gifts evolved over time so that what my true path is evolves over time? You know, I do think distinctly that this lovely game called life, it evolves in pace with us, so that as we grow capacity, life grows a challenge just that much more to keep us interested. You know, otherwise we'd get bored and the game would end. But I think it's really important to stay true to who you are inside. And if something's not lighting you up, man, who cares what someone else is going to think if you step away? When you step away, wow, Eric, yeah, that fucking great meditation. Didn't he start Yoga Rocks the Park? Yeah, and it's still running. You know what's so cool is I'm up in Steamboat right now. I've spent the last 10 days painting, writing, doing this now. And down in Littleton, there's been 30 Outlaw Yoga classes at our studio. And that's fantastic. That teaching is still happening. All that work is still going. And I'm up here working on what's next, creating and innovating. And we need those people, you know, to be the tip of the spear, as they say, to point the way forward. So good for you, brother, for striking out in a new direction. Proud of you. It's been fun to watch you.
Well, so say people are listening in they're at a job that they don't love, but it's bringing in the money.
Quit.
Just quit. Just go for it.
Quit. Here's the thing is a lot of people will go, well, I'll quit when? I'll quit when I make my next commission. I'll quit when I have this much money in the bank. Or they'll sit at work and go, what do I want to do next? But I can't pick anything else up with this hand if I'm holding this cup, right? And the same thing happens with an opportunity, whether it's a job or relationship or where you live, your environment, something like that. You can only affect change in so many different aspects of your life. You know, there's only a few really areas where we spend it: professionally, personally, interpersonally, our play life, which gets very little of it. And then, you know, our personal practice in between our ears. So if something's not going right, look at those 5 lives and say, okay, well, does my job light me up? No? Okay, quit. Because you're not going to be motivated to find out what's really going to ignite your passion until your hand is empty. Then you can pick something else up. You know, so I'm a big proponent of quitting your job. You don't like it, it doesn't light you up, quit, man.
That brings up my next point, man, or my next question is there's this thing in the yoga world, or just something you see, that if you do your dharma, if you really serve fully, and you do what you love and you believe in and you do it fully, the universe will take care of you. And can you talk a little bit about that? Is that bullshit or is that real?
No, that's real, man. The universe is always taking care of you, even when it's shitting on you. Because even if times are tough and things seem really difficult, I go through hard times, man. I'm not like, I don't wake up farting moonbeams and just rainbows flowing out of my head. I get fucking angry. I get mad. I get sad because of the rich texture of life. You know, these challenges keep coming and keep coming. and to the point where we can really step outside of them. And that's just part of the game. So if you can always keep that little bit of space, right, between action and reaction, as they say, and go, okay, well, this challenging instance is happening. Anger is arising. Does it have to do with an unfulfilled desire? Does it have to do with, an anxiety or something like that? And you can create a little space around it. Like I like to talk to myself like I might a 3-year-old with a therapist, like a play therapist, So if I'm trying to assimilate something, I'll sit in my chair and I'll just let it wash over me. Okay, what are you experiencing right now? I'm experiencing anger. Oh, interesting. What are you angry at? And I'll just ask myself this. Don't do it out loud or in public. You'd be a crazy person. But, you'd be amazed at the answers that come up. And they're almost always irrational. They might always point back to something that happened that you haven't assimilated as effectively as you could now in the past. And it might suggest a way forward. And, in that regard, I can look back in my past. My father was a drug addict and drug dealer, Mike Sawyer. He's 18 years sober now and very inspiring in his own way. But, back in the day, my mom took me against the court order out of Michigan, hid me with my grandparents in North Carolina while she moved to California and set up a home. And so I was experiencing this amazingly traumatic separation at a really young age. And it led me to, feel ungrounded and unrooted and really not to trust people fully. Even to this day, it's something that I work on very, very mindfully. And to be able to sit and look back at the root of the challenge you continue to experience can be helpful around resolving it. But don't fool yourself into thinking you're not going to get another one in the future. So keep them integrating, and then be wondering, a sense of wonder. The respect for the challenge that's coming after.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think the universe holds us. Whether or not we interpret it as such, up to each of us.
That's right. Well, I was looking at the practice of Outlaw Yoga is based on the 5 foundations. So this is the 5 foundations of Outlaw Yoga. Cultivate mindfulness on and off the mat. Do the discipline of your personal practice. Choose boldness in yoga and in life. Find acceptance for old ways of being by breaking through to new possibilities. And create connection in the class and beyond in life. So, I know we only have about 45 minutes total for the show, and Outlaw has a lot going on, but can you pull out some of the most important points that could help a listener or someone watching online to live their most full life, to really break through to those new possibilities? Be at peace while you're doing it. That's something I've noticed too about life. You want to break through to your new possibilities, but that could get tied into the Buddhist thing of craving and dissatisfaction, where I'm not good enough now. I need to be better. I need to be different. How do you balance those two in the outlaw world?
There's a fine line to walk, isn't there, between cultivating positive, productive, sustainable self-growth and between accepting that you're perfect always and already. If you can't, as they say, skip right to Brahma and, skip right to the end, then the rest of us get to work at it. So if you can skip, then skip to it. Just accept everything and you'll be cool, right? If you can't do that, then that's fine. We got some tools where we can start to chip away at it. And I think of this self, this, trip back to God that we're all on. I think of it like an archaeologist who's excavating something really precious that's been buried for years and years and years. And it's been down there all along, but you got to get to it. So when you think about the archaeologists, the first thing they do is bring a bulldozer in. They bring a bulldozer in, they clear whatever's on the surface, right? That bulldozer to me is like our practice on the mat. The push-ups, Warrior 2, man, I have found very few things that work as effectively as intense physicality to show you what happens in your head when you're squeezed. When life puts a pressure on you, what automatically comes up? You sit in Utkatasana for a minute, literally a minute, minute and a half, right? You're going to find out immediately what you're made of currently, right? That's the bulldozer level of excavation. After the bulldozer, then they put the grid out. You see it on TV, right? And they go in with a shovel and a pick, and this is sort of getting into our meditative practice, because when you sit down in that chair and you're quiet, you know as well as I do what happens. It gets really loud, really loud in here with the patterns. I got a few patterns. One's a fighter. I want to fight everything. I just watched a great new Nako video set up there, near that, all that pipeline mess that's still going on. And the first thing I want to do is fight. How do I fight this? I feel stuck by not being able to fight an amorphous system, or just seeing a person who's just doing their job and doing their dharma, trying to feed their families, and a police officer or something like that. But that pattern comes up when I sit in a chair. Right. When I sit in a chair quiet, the fighter shows up. So I know it's not the police officer, it's not the pipeline. It's here. It's right here is where the fight needs to start, right? And then the archaeologists, the tools get finer and finer and finer. So they go from the hammer to the shovel, the pick, then the rock hammer, right? And the toothbrush, and then finally the toothpick. Use the tiniest little toothpick to get off that last little speck of dust that's creating some separation between who we think we are and what's really us. And so you start with asana, the big tools. Here's a big tool. Instead of saying, I don't know, say, I wonder. Well, what do I want to do with my life? I don't know. I don't know is an answer, and it will shut down your inquiry. Instead, you go, I wonder. I wonder what I want to do in my professional life. That's a big tool. That's a bulldozer tool, right? Mantra. When the mind is being really mad at you, you can think peace on the inhale, love on the exhale. That's a big tool, That's the bulldozer tool. You get finer and finer. You do an anapana meditation, just noticing the breath. The tools are getting finer and finer and finer. You don't start out with a toothpick. If you're going to be a successful archaeologist, you start out with a bulldozer. And I think a lot of people think we have that American Western mentality that says, I'm going to skip to level 3. I'm going to skip to whatever is the most advanced, instead of going, no, let's start at the beginning with morality. What's right and wrong mean to me? What does honesty mean to me? And these are ideas that you can just let filter into your life on a daily basis. You don't have to be wrestling with these huge concepts about, if you're poor, would you steal bread? Is that right or wrong to feed your family? Fuck that. Just think next time that you don't want to go to work and you're calling your boss to tell him you're sick, and ask yourself what honesty means to you, and when it's okay to be honest and when it's okay to not be. Be unashamed of that. The first thing that happens is shame. Small self wants to keep you stuck in the patterns. So you acknowledge that one's been happening. And the first thing that happens is, oh my God, I'm so bad. I'm so bad. Man, I need to hide from everything. Stop the shame in its tracks. Yeah. Okay, that was me in the past. No big deal. Accept it. This is not me moving forward. This is what I call taking a look. Just take a look. Take an honest look at the landscape of your life and pick one or two things out that don't feel all right to you in your integrity, right? And then take full ownership of those. Instead of passing the buck and saying, oh God, well, that person did this and my mommy did that. Just go, no, that happened. And then I acted. From there, that's taking ownership. Mm-hmm. From that place of taking ownership, we can look back and we can see that no matter what the events of the life in our past have served up to us, we have always consistently reacted from inside of us. Once we realize we've been the sole architect of our inner landscape, then it opens up the power to take action. We can start to reimagine that inner landscape. We can start to reimagine our response to the stimuli that are around us. Yeah, you might have a dickhead boss. I don't know a lot of people that don't have a dickhead boss. We got teachers down there in Littleton that, in a sense work for me. I'm probably dickhead boss to those guys. I demand a lot, And they get to decide we train them well because they decide how they want to react with love. But life's always going to serve us up some shit. That's what life is. There's a beauty in that, there's a beauty in accepting that. There's a beauty in repackaging that and turning hell into heaven, as it were. We do that up here, not out there.
Wow, man. So if people come to practice with you at Yoga Journal, New York City, April 21st, Earth Day weekend, I feel like they're just going to get the tip of the iceberg. So can you tell us what to expect when you do your class? But also I notice when I take your class, you're really good at weaving in this deeper Dharma while you're getting a good ass kicking on the mat. Can you talk a little bit about what to expect if you've never taken a class?
The yoga practice, I fell in love with it when I first went into the studio. And then the first red light I'd hit, the first text I would get, I'd fall out of love with life. And I realized that there was a disconnect between our practice on the mat and our practice off the mat. And to me, that disconnect was taken up by tools. How can I practice and learn a set of tools on the mat that help to carry me and propel me in this same connected way through my life off of it, which is most of our lives. So, to the point, what do I expect when I go into class? Brother, I try and expect as little as possible. We have had several classes together, you and I, and each and every one of them has been so different. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's 500 people in a park. Sometimes it's 70 people in an office. The last class we had was at Galvanize, right? It was an office space, essentially. Mm-hmm. And, whether it's someone who's 18 or 80, I try to chuck the expectations out the door and just get as present as I possibly can. I don't think of myself as a teacher. I try to think of myself as a conduit for consciousness to flow through, so that if I can get as clear as possible, then whatever needs to flow through can. That said, students can expect rock and roll and a hell of a good time, and hopefully a lot of sweat too. And if we can take a tool or two off the mat that will allow us to be more present in our lives, then so much the better.
Great. Now, will Ken K and the boys be out there in New York City with you for music?
The boys are going to be there for sure. What the music lineup is going to look like right now is a little uncertain. We're checking logistics and musician calendars. My hope is to get all the rockers out there.
Okay, so it's going to be live music in New York City at Yoga Journal, not a DJ or something.
Friday Night Live, 5:30 to 7 p.m. on 4/21.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and then Earth Day's the next day, so it'd be kind of fun pre-celebration.
Cool. And that when I first started yoga, I was into Anusara yoga and some Ashtanga, things like that. And now I've moved more towards, whatever just works for me, Vinyasa flow and all this, or power. And I used to have judgment against music in yoga class or music with meditation. What do you think about why the live music? I love it. And now I love it.
Man, we started teaching, me and my dad, Ken K, 5.5 years ago at Core Power. It was Friday night at 8 p.m. It was the latest class on the schedule anywhere in Colorado. And I had shopped an idea to a few different studios about me and my old man doing a live music class. And more than one studio manager said, "Who wants to take yoga at 8 p.m. on a Friday night? No, thank you." And I just kept asking and knocking on doors until one finally said, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." He goes, "Let's do the music once a month though." And I've never been really good at going, doing what I'm told. But in this instance, I said, "Yeah, sure. Okay." And then I had Ken K come in from night one. And the first night we went in to teach, someone had got there before us and turned the lights down low. And they put on some really traditional yoga music with cymbals and gongs. And we walked in and Ken K had his guitar. He goes, "What do you want to do?" I go, "I want to fucking rock and roll." He goes, all right. So we turned the lights up. He took us a seat in the back, and there's about 35 people there. And I'll never forget, I walked up to the front of the room. I said, I'm Justin. That's my old man. We came to rock and roll for you. If that's not what you're into, there's the door. And we just cranked. I think he opened with David Bowie. I'm an alligator. I'm a mama, papa coming for you. And the next week we had 70, and the next week we hit capacity, and we averaged 90 people until we moved on to other venues. And, I'd like to think of, I forget who said it. I read it in one of Barron's books, I think. He said something to the effect of yoga, as quiet as you can get. Meditation, yoga, whatever steps are leading you to the quiet. They have to be successively quieter. You can't just turn all the noise off. You walked into class before and the teacher goes, okay, forget about your to-do list. Haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
What's the first thing you think of?
Your to-do list.
Fucking to-do list. You can't just walk in, sit down, and be quiet and still, right? You have to take steps towards that. And I think a productive step towards that is music that motivates you to push yourself harder, because the harder you're going to push yourself on the mat in a safe way, it's going to reveal more and more about yourself in a productive way.
Right on. I mean, a lot of the theme of this conversation seems gross to subtle. Like, just you got to ease into your practice. You got to ease into the tools you're using, like an archaeologist would do.
Chip away at it. Chip away at it. They said that, I heard the other day on a podcast or something, I think it was George Mumford. He said that there are 4 conditions required for neuroplasticity. One is that a challenge must be present, a high state of arousal. You have to be interested. You have to put your presence into that high state of arousal. And then it has to happen in increments. That's one of the other preconditions to the brain actually changing itself. The 4th one is oxygen. There has to be enough oxygen in the brain for new brain growth to develop. So I try to think of those 4 steps. We all want to just kind of wake up today and for life to be lovely in a brand new way, but it's going to take a lot of work. And a lot of that work happens in such a way that when you're in it, you're not celebrating it because you don't see the increments that you're achieving. It's not until you get a year out, 2 years out, that you can look back and go, wow, I've been working really hard and having a lot of success in that work. And so I try to trust that process, that even when I'm stuck in the shit, as you bring up, that, tiny growth is occurring, even if all I'm seeing is new white hairs in my mustache.
Right on, man. Well, over the years, teaching meditation and yoga and being around here, a lot of the adults will, it'll affect their life in a very positive way. And of course, the ones with kids start asking, how can I use this to help my kids? I imagine that must be how something to do with how the Adventures of Babu came about. Is that true? Is this a tool people can use to help out their kids to progress on the path? Or
absolutely. I think one of the great crimes that we're still committing in this country specifically is that we are trying to program kids to work before we teach them how to use their brains and their minds harmoniously. So instead of explaining to them that they're not their thoughts, we simply stick them into a cubicle, as it were, at their desks and give them worksheets and tasks. So when I think about how are we going to make big change, it's going to be kids growing up more consciously off the screens and learning how to use their brain, their consciousness, their mind in a more productive way. So, the Adventures of Babu is pretty fun because it's a universal story. That's why we're giving away 100% of the net proceeds to charities benefiting kids and elephants, because I feel like the story's not mine. The story's all of ours. The story is about, how can we be okay with right where we are, even if it's not fun, even if it's not entertaining, even if it's a little unpleasant. How can we get okay with being right here? And so it weaves this universal story through some really fun illustrations. You bought one of the paintings that all have the chakra colors as backgrounds that really mirror what Babu's going through at the time in his adventure. And so it's kind of a sneaky way to start getting those ideas into play in the minds of the kids out there.
Great. Yeah, teaching kids how to be more conscious. Great book. I read it to my kids all the time since I got it.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Do they like it?
Yeah, they love it. I wish for some reason the screen comes up backwards. I'm still learning that technology, but just hold this in a mirror so you can see it at home.
It's a pretty fun book.
They love the artwork with the turtle. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, man.
Yeah. Well, on our show, on the Awake Experience, we always end with this similar question. What are 3 things, from all your life experience, doesn't have to be from yoga or martial arts or anything you've done professionally, just your whole life. What are 3 things people can start doing today that are very actionable, that can improve the quality of their life, that can help them to just live a more mindful, peaceful, happy, enriching life?
That's a really cool question. I would recommend a multi-tiered approach, really. I would pick changes that you can sustain through your life. So don't just change your entire diet, all your friends, and your lifestyle one day and expect it's going to stick. Think of that idea of increments. So, I would make sure your water source is clean, free of fluoride, free of chlorine. Most town water, most public water has fluoride in it, which is used in the Soviets in the past. It's been shown to calcify the pineal gland and to make prisoners in the Soviet prison system more docile. So that's one thing I really take into consideration is fluoride-free water. It opens a whole new, broader conversation around, the pipeline and some of these efforts to raise awareness around how important water is to us in our life. So I would start right there. I go up the mountain once a week to get really clean well water up in the foothills for our Littleton studio to try and, offer that as a service to our students. So clean water, we're talking to yogis here, so there's probably some component of exercise in their life. Having destroyed my body over the years, I've had 3 surgeries in this shoulder alone. I would caution people to be as wise as possible, as early as possible. There's nothing to be gained, improved by being the person who does the most push-ups in the studio. In fact, I'll even give listeners this. If they've listened this long, they deserve this. I make the practice so freaking hard because I want to give an opportunity to a student to make their own bold choice. I want a student to go, fuck this, I'm taking child's pose. Fuck this, I'm going slower. Fuck this guy, I know my body better. I want to create those conditions so that maybe for the first time in their lives, they can stand up and go, no, I know better. It feels better to go slower. It feels better to take a break right now. I try to create that sharp of a condition. So be as wise as possible. There's great shoulder therapeutic sequences out there we don't have time to get into, but I've recorded those. There'll be one coming out on yogiapproved.com with Ashton in March if people want to look into that. And number 3, well, we've done nutrition, what goes in the body. We've done physicality, what you do with the body. You may as well do something with the mind then at that point. I think that there's a distinct triad between the mind, the brain, and consciousness. Now, the brain is the computer, the gray stuff, right, that we've been given at birth. The mind is the programming that we've been told to use to run the computer. And the consciousness is the bit that can zoom out and it can witness the interaction of those two. And I think I would just invite people to spend 10 minutes every day trying to zoom out in a productive way that lets them see, okay, this is the brain working, this is the programming working. And just to start to squeak out as much awareness as possible around one piece of unproductive programming. You might have an unproductive piece of programming that says, if you don't look a certain way, then you have no value. You might have an unproductive piece of programming that says, if I don't eat this much or this type of thing, then I have very little value. And I would just invite people to start looking at those pieces of programming in their minds. And at that point, when you start to identify them, you can decide, well, this is serving me or it's not. And if it's not serving me, then download a more effective piece of programming. If it's serving you, keep it.
Great. Well, I heard 4 there. So we're giving so pick sustainable changes. I love pick sustainable changes because when you go on, try to change your diet, if you try to do it all at once, it's sometimes not going to work very well. It's better to pick something and really stick to it that I think you can accomplish. Good water, no fluoride. It's a very simple thing to do. Just get good water in your life. Be wise with your body while you're young. We got nothing to prove. Don't abuse your body. And then the bonus one, and probably one of the most important, is your mind. You got to see that programming. And if it's not working for you, if it's some old negative programming, then you have to tune into pure consciousness more, would you say? Or
from that place of a pure place of consciousness is going to suggest the new way forward. But you can even look backwards and just see the mistakes or the pitfalls you're repeatedly hitting. I repeatedly have an abusive partner. I repeatedly choose jobs and bosses that demean me. Look back at how the patterns have expressed themselves, and that repetitive negative will suggest a positive way forward. So just dialing into pure consciousness, fucking hard, man. You know that. It takes days and days and days, lifetimes of meditation. But if you just do the mathematics of it, look at the equation in reverse and examine your choices and the results of them. And if you see a pattern, I continue to make this type of decision, and lo and behold, it continues to come with this type of response, then why not go back? Or you can't go back. Why not the next time you get a chance to make a similar decision, just try making a 180-degree different one and see if you get a different response. That will suggest a greater, more productive piece of programming. So you don't even have to drag consciousness into it if you're not there yet. You just look back at the mathematics of your life.
Yeah, stop making the same mistakes. That's what I love about producing this show. The Awake Experience features someone every week who's going to teach you ways not to follow those old patterns that don't lead to the life that you want. I mean, that's really what a big part of this mindfulness game is. So we had Lisa Wimberger on, the founder of the Neurosculpting Institute, and man, she'll give you some great tools to retrain those neural pathways so you don't keep making that same mistake. A lot of people could hear, of course I look back and I don't want to make those same mistakes, but I keep doing it. And everything that you teach and we're talking about here just can help people to create that life they want.
I do too, man. I keep doing it too.
Back in, man.
If you make the same mistake, don't make it again. And if you make it again, don't make it again. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Life is hard. It's short and long all at the same time. And as quick as you can get to forgiveness, the quicker you get to a more productive pattern of choices, I think.
Right on. Now, if people want to practice more deeply with you, Justin, I know they can go to New York City to Yoga Journal, and they can get your book, The Adventures of Babu, From There to Here for their kids. And that all the proceeds go to nonprofits, which is great. They can read the Outlaw Protocol. Where can they find everything to go deeper with you?
Well, I'm pretty accessible online. A ton of websites out there, outlawyoga.littleton.com, and babutheelephant.com, JustinKaliszewski.com is underway. Classes on Yogi Approved and Yoga Download. And we have an Outlaw Yoga YouTube channel with totally free classes there. Shockingly easy to find me on the internet. A little bit harder to find me in person. You got to work for that. I do teach on occasion at our Littleton studio. It's on Main Street in Littleton, Colorado. And we do a full festival schedule and tour in the summers. So if people want to be in touch, they can go to any of those sites and they can put their email address in, and I'll only sell it to the highest bidder, I assure them. I won't do that. But, they can find me on Facebook, Instagram as Outlaw Yogi, and places like that. And from there, I really appreciate discipline. I like people that go the extra mile. So I try to make it a little bit harder to connect with me. You know that.
Yeah, we got you on the call. It took 3 tries, but we got you here. I know you have a cold, so I hope it continues to improve.
I appreciate it.
All right, Justin. Well, thanks for your time.
Thanks for yours, brother.